Hello and welcome to Professor Pincushion. In this tutorial, I'm going to be giving a demonstration on how to do an exposed zipper. Now you can see it's different from other zippers because you can clearly see the whole thing. The nice thing is you get to choose how much of the zipper tape you actually want to expose. It's a nice artistic embellishment that you can add to your garments using your zippers. So let's go ahead and get started. Here are some supplies I'm going to use in order to create the exposed zipper. So I have my garment that's going to have a zipper in it, and I'm just using scraps of fabric, but you go ahead and use your garment. A little bit of interfacing. This is the fusible interfacing, which I'm going to put onto my fabric here. Of course, your zipper, a fabric marker comes in handy, also my scissors, pins, and I have this fabric tape. This is double-sided fabric tape that doesn't gum up your needle. Also, I'm going to be using my iron and sewing machine. The first thing I'm going to do is apply fusible interfacing to the area that the zipper is going to be placed in. So we're going to pretend that this is the center back seam of my garment and this is just one side. So I would have my other piece over here and the zipper would kind of fit in between them. So even though these are two separate pieces, I would place fusible interfacing on this side and then I would do it on this piece on this side as well. So it's wrong side facing up. I'm cutting a strip of fusible interfacing that's about 1 1/4 inches in width, and the length is going to be a little bit longer than the length of the zipper. And I'm talking about just the zipper teeth, not from the ends of the zipper tape here. So from here to here. So I place this in the area that the zipper is going to be in my garment. Wrong side with the glue bubbles of the interfacing going to that wrong side. I already have my iron heating up. Place my pressing cloth right over it, and then I'm going to go ahead, dampen it. Carefully place my iron down for a few seconds. And then when I need to move to another section, I lift it up and move it to the next section. So I just did it for this one side, but I would do the same thing for the other side as well. Now we're going to mark in the area where the end of the zipper is going to be. Now if you're using a pattern, sometimes there's a large dot that marks where the end of the zipper goes, but if you don't, go ahead and place your zipper in the area. And you just need to make sure, because usually the zipper tab up here doesn't go all the way to the very top of the garment because you have seam allowance. So if you have a 1/2 inch seam allowance here, you need to make sure that that's not going to be in the way. So just take that into account when you place your zipper onto your garment. And then you're just going to lift up this actual tape part so you can see where the stop is, and then you can mark that. You can see I've already marked it. And I'm also going to do the same thing with my other piece as well. And I'm just going to line these two up because I want to make sure that I'm going to put my stop in the same exact spot because we want to make sure everything's going to line up. The next thing you need to consider is how much of this zipper tape you actually want to see once it's exposed and sewn in. We can sew it in so you're only seeing the teeth and you're not seeing any of the zipper tape, or if you want to show a little bit of the zipper tape on each side, we can do that as well. You can see mine has a cool design, so I might want to show that off a little bit. So we need to make note of that. I'm just going to grab a sewing gauge. You're going to measure from the middle of the zipper teeth to where you want the edge of your fabric to be on either side of the zipper. So again, how much do you actually want to show when it's all said and done and it's all stitched in? So once I have that, we're just going to say 3/8 because I want to show quite a bit of this. And we're going to pretend my seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch for my garment. So I want to show 3/8 of an inch on each side from the middle of my zipper teeth to each side. So 3/8 on this side and then 3/8 on this side as well. I'm going to take my 3/8 and I'm going to add whatever my seam allowance is. So mine is 5/8 of an inch. I'm going to add 3/8. That just happens to be 1 inch. So from the end all the way to the top, I'm going to measure from the edge here 1 inch. And you could just make a couple of marks just so you have a guideline here, because we're going to take it to our machine and then we're going to stitch right along these lines. So let me just make a couple of marks and then I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to start up here at the top at the 1 inch mark. So down the side, Once I get to this point here, I'm going to pivot and then sew across, and I would do the same thing with my other fabric piece as well, because they're both going to get attached to the zipper. So I have my 1-inch marks here. I would do the same thing on this side. I'm just sewing each side individually. I'm not sewing anything together yet. This is all just prepping to put in the zipper. So for this, I'm just doing a regular length stitch. I'm coming down to this part where I need to actually pivot. So I put my needle down, lift my foot, and then I just pivot the fabric. And that's how I do the end. Next, we're going to do the rest of our center back seam. So I'm going to take both my sides with the interfacing. I'm going to place them so they're right side to right side and line them up. So I'm lining up top, bottom, and then the side edge here, the center back. So the interfacing sections are on the outside and the right side's on the inside. And I'm going to sew my center back seam starting here at this line and going down to the bottom of my garment or wherever I need to go. So since I'm going to pretend and do a 5/8 seam allowance, I'm going to start here, so 5/8 to the bottom portion here. For sewing my center back seam, again, I'm just doing a regular length stitch. Don't forget to back stitch. And I'm just starting at the bottom of the zipper area and just going down to the bottom of my garment. From this line for the end of the zipper, you're going to go up about a 1/2 inch, and you're going to, from this point, you're going to cut diagonally to this corner, being careful not to actually cut into any of your stitches. And you're cutting through both layers. So this layer and this layer, and just do it at the same time. So I'm just going to flip it so it's a little bit easier for me to cut. And I'm just going to try to go diagonally as best I can without cutting my stitches. All right, and then you're going to open up the seam. So we have it on both sides. You can go ahead, and this is our seam allowance. You go ahead and press this open. You're going to see, because we cut this slit right here, we're going to have these points. Press all this open. This part up here, you're going to fold it back so that the stitches we did on this line is going to end up right on the fold line. So it's going to be 1 inch on both sides for me, just because of my example. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and press everything. At this point, this is what the inside of my garment looks like. So I'm going to flip it over. So I'm looking at the right side. And you can see these little diagonal parts right here on the right side. This is the part we're going to address right now. Let me grab my zipper. So this is the end of my zipper with my zipper stop. And I need to stitch down the bottom of the zipper tape here to this line right here, which is the end of my zipper. So these little diagonal parts, I'm going to take them and I'm going to tuck them under or flip them over on the inside. So we end up with a straight squared line here with our stitches. And I just marked it with my blue marker, so it'd be a little bit easier for you to see. Now I'm going to put the bottom of the zipper. So this is going to get tucked in. And I'm going to center it. So the stop goes right in the center of the seam line here. I'm just going to hold it in place. I'm going to take my fabric. I'm going to flip it over the zipper. And what you'll see is now the little diagonal parts are the only thing that's left for my zipper tape, because we're going to stitch right across this line as close as we can get to the stop. And that's going to sew the bottom of the zipper to our fabric. So let me show you what it kind of looks like from the other side. It might be a little bit easier for you to visualize. Let's go ahead and look at it again from the wrong side. So here's that same area. I'm flipping it over. So the stitches are going squared across. Now the wrong side of the zipper is faced up. I'm going to place the stop right along this top line right here. And the tape that's hanging over is now hanging over this side. But when I sew it, I'm just sewing these diagonal parts that are sticking out to the tape. So they're just individually going to be stitched like this. I'm not sewing it to here. I'm not sewing it to here. Just these little guys right here are getting stitched to the zipper tape. So I'm going to pin those and take them to my machine so I can go ahead and do that with my zipper foot. I went ahead and switched to my zipper foot because I want to sew as close as I can to that edge or where my line is. Also, I'm just using a regular length stitch, and you want to really make sure that you're sewing straight across because that's going to affect how it's going to look on the right side. Also, when you sew, try not to have these two ends separated, but you want them to be right up next to each other. And you're just going to sew along that line. Just make sure that you also do some back stitching. The zipper is already attached to this bottom edge, and now I'm going to do both sides. So to do that, what I'm going to do is grab my fabric tape. Now this tape is specially made for fabric because you can sew through it. It's not going to gum up your needles. It's also double-sided. So it's a nice substitute to use instead of pins. I'm going to put little strips of it on this inside folded edge. So this is looking at the right side. I'm going to flip it over so I'm looking at the wrong side. Right along the folded edge, I'm just placing little strips of my tape. I'm going to go ahead and take off the paper backing, which I've already started doing on this side. You can see one barely right there. And then you're going to place it on your zipper tape where you designated it when you did your measurement. Now, if you did do it so you want it to be placed and you're only seeing the zipper teeth, make sure that you don't place it too close that the fabric's going to get caught as you're zipping your zipper up and down. So you want to give it a little bit of wiggle room there. I want it to be about right there, so I'm going to tape it all into place. Once everything is taped, I'm going to take my garment, I'm going to flip it over, so then I'm looking at the inside, but I'm going to hold on to my seam allowance here. And it's all, at this point, taped into place, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew on my original line that I made. So I made my line at the 1-inch mark, and I'm going to sew right on top of that line all the way to the top, and that's what's going to attach it to my zipper tape. So we're not going to actually have any stitches on the right side. Instead, it's going to be right on that fold line. So it's going to kind of be hidden, and it's going to look really nice and neat. So I'm going to do it for this side, and I'm going to do it for this side as well. For this step, I'm again using my zipper foot, and you can see a little bit closer now that I'm sewing right on my previous stitch where my blue line was. So don't forget to backstitch, use a regular length stitch, and to do it for both sides. After you finish sewing your sides, go ahead and give the sides a good press, and with that your zipper is in and you can continue making the rest of your garment. New tutorials are released weekly, so please subscribe to be notified of the next release. Make sure to check out our other videos and visit ProfessorPincushion.com to view our complete library with well over 200 sewing video tutorials, including our exclusive premium content. Our premium membership is only $5 a month for unlimited access and only available at ProfessorPincushion.com. Also, don't forget to download our mobile app for videos on the go. Thanks for watching.